Alright, it's finally happened. The Nintendo Switch 2 has finally been acknowledged by Nintendo. They recently put out a tweet talking about how they're going to announce it over this fiscal year, as well as confirming that there will be a Direct in June, which was nice of them to do. We don't have to worry and panic about when the next Nintendo Direct will come, and that Direct is going to be focused on all of the Switch 1 games that are coming out for the rest of 2024. And I know throughout this year so far, a lot of people have been panicked about how good of a year 2024 is actually going to be. And now that the Switch 2 has been confirmed, we know that this is the final year of the Nintendo Switch. So that, I think, has put a lot of people into a mood where they think Nintendo doesn't have a lot to show. But I disagree, and in this video I thought it would be fun to just speculate on what I think Nintendo has coming for the rest of the year. What I think basically they're going to announce at this June Direct that will be coming up, in June. So I know why people think this way, because the Wii U's final year was pretty dire. They only had about 7 games, with ignoring Breath of the Wild, which is obviously cross-platform. The biggest name of those 7 was Paper Mario Color Splash, which sort of unceremoniously launched in October of that year. But it did also have Star Fox Zero, which I know how people feel about that game, but it's still a brand new Star Fox game. I think they intend it to be bigger. Pokken Tournament, Twilight Princess HD, Star Fox Guard as well, and then Mario and Sonic. It's not a lot of titles, I agree. I think that's a pretty weak year. But I think something that a lot of fans forget about is that the Nintendo 3DS was also still in production at that point and still also getting games. And technically, the Switch was also a replacement for the 3DS, so the 3DS would still continue to get games after the Switch came out. You could, in theory, count this as the 3DS's final year without a proper competitor on the market. And they released all of these games for the Nintendo 3DS that year. When you add that and the Wii U together, that's quite a lot of games. And I'm only counting the Nintendo developed ones, not the ones that they also then went on to publish, like Concept Revolved, which also came out that year. Another reason that I think the second half of 2024 will actually be quite a good year for Nintendo is their forecast. Now, they did say that they expect revenue to drop this year. I believe 4 by 30. Their forecast was lower by 39%, and their revenue they expect to dip by 19% when compared to last year. But they are also predicting 13.5 million Switches to be sold in the next year, which is quite a lot when you consider the fact that they're going to be announcing a successor. So they might be thinking, oh, we'll put the Switch on sale this year and that will cause more people to buy it. And to be fair, this is also 13.5 is still less than how much the Switch sold last year, so maybe this is a reasonable dip for them. But I don't know, for me that feels like quite a lot, and I think that if they're expecting that many pieces of hardware to be sold, it needs software to back it up, right? And that's what we're going to be going into right now. So let's go over all the games that I think we will see this year. And then we can look back at this video at the end of this year and see how right or how completely wrong I was. So first up is the only game we do know is actually coming, so I figured we'd start this. And that is NES World Championship NES Edition, which was leaked by the ESRB. Now, there's a possibility that by the time this video drops, they will have actually officially announced this and we'll have a bit more clear-cut of an idea of when it's going to launch. And if that does happen, then future me will roll on in here right now and give you the scoop on what happened. And future Josh, right here, in typical Sod's Law, Nintendo announced the Nintendo World Championship NES Edition over the week I was editing this video. So, the Nintendo World Championship NES Edition is basically a new NES remix with a bit more multiplayer and stuff added to it, and it comes out on July 18th, which is pretty cool because it means past me was correct. The Famicom's actual anniversary is July, So I think that this edition, the NES World Championships, will drop in July to coincide with that anniversary. But okay, so that's at least one confirmed game we have for the second half of this year, and we'll probably see more of it in that rumoured June Direct. But before I send it back to Past Me, there is one additional thing I want to add, because I think an upcoming game I talked about in the previous recording of this video, I got some information wrong, and I thought it was just better to re-record it. And that is a new Fire Emblem game that is likely coming out this year. So for a long time now, it's been rumoured that there's going to be another Fire Emblem remake happening. It was one of the rumoured cancelled 3DS projects from back in the day, and a lot of the development team who worked on Shadows of Valentia haven't been seen. They haven't worked on Engage or Three Houses or any other Intelligent System game, which implies that they have been working on a Fire Emblem game since Shadows of Valentia finished. And if you look at the code names from the last video, the last NantenJex talks, where there is a missing game between Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Engage, which we just call Iron 18 because that's what the code name would be. That could be that remake. Like, everyone's expecting to see it. Now, initially, I thought that it would definitely be happening, that it couldn't be a cancelled project. But then I remembered that actually it has happened once before. There is no Iron 13, or FE 13, as they used to go by FE whatever before they swapped to Iron. But Iron 13 is non-existent, and from dev interviews and what we know, it seems very likely that this was the cancelled Wii game that they had planned before having to scrap it and presumably then go and work on Awakening, which is Iron 14. So it's entirely possible that Iron 18 is a scrapped game. The cancelled 3DS remake could have been Iron 18. But I have a feeling that it's not, or at least that cancelled 3DS game was then reworked into this Switch remake that is coming instead, in a similar way to how the Nintendo 64 Fire Emblem game was sort of rebooted and became Binding Blade back in the day. I have no idea if those shared a codename, because we don't know what the codename is for Fire Emblem 64, but it's entirely possible. But yeah, so Iron 18, that is probably a Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War remake, if I had to make an educated guess. But I think that will be coming this year, as opposed to it being a Switch 2 game, specifically because it's been in development for so long. I have a feeling it's just done, and it's one of those titles that Nintendo is just sitting on, waiting for the ideal time to release it. And given that Shadows of Valentia came out so late that it actually came out after the Switch 1 released, I don't think they're going to have an issue releasing a Fire Emblem so close to the Switch 2's launch, especially if the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, then it doesn't really matter. But okay, I just wanted to chuck that in here. Now, back to Past Me. The other one that I guess we technically know is on its way, we just don't know if it's this year or not, or if it's been pushed back to Switch 2, is Metroid Prime 4, which they reconfirmed in their investors meeting. It's still happening, so it's not been cancelled. And I think, and I thought this is the start of the year, this is the year that Metroid Prime 4 releases. This is the year I fully expect Metroid Prime 4 to drop. I think it's going to be the very end of this year now. I think it's going to be 2024. It could maybe get pushed into next year. I know there are people out there who think that Metroid Prime 4 will be cross-released with Switch 2, like in the same way Breath of the Wild was. And maybe that will be the case, but Breath of the Wild was technically a game for the Wii U's final year as well, so Metroid Prime 4 will be as well. So obviously it is cross-platform, it will release when the Switch 2 launches on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. I don't really see the point in them doing that if the Switch 2 is going to be backwards compatible, but whatever. Marketing, I guess. But they have to release Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch 1 because that's what it was promised for. And I think this final fiscal year for the Switch 1 is when we're going to get it. So Metroid Prime 4, very end of this year is my prediction for that. And related, I also think Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are going to drop as well for the Switch. And I think those will be shadow drops for the June Direct. that we get. At least one of them, if not both of them. It kind of depends on whether they're real remasters or not. I was banking on Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 being actual remasters, like Metroid Prime 1 was. But the longer we've gone on without seeing them, the more I think it might just be a Pikmin 1 and 2 situation, where it's just the versions of Metroid Prime 2 and Prime 3 from the Trilogy collection, with both GameCube and Wii Remote support, not Wii Remote obviously, Joy-Con pointer support, and then running in like a higher resolution but not redoing all the graphics, not adding in a model mode like Remaster got. So I'm now leaning more towards that, although I would like to be wrong. I'd like it to be a remaster. And I think that's dropping as a Shadow Drop this June, in that direct, being announced and Shadow dropped, and then Metroid Prime 4 will be announced right after. So that's the next one. Well, I guess the next two, I think. A new Mario Party, I think, is on the way. It's the right time for another Mario Party game to drop, right? Just another game from Endcube, but also another Mario Party, because the last one we got is in 2021. And as shown from this financial results, both Mario Parties still continue to sell very well. There's still a call for Mario Party, and they're like both selling well. So they're like not really competing with each other. They're both doing pretty good. So I think adding another one on top of that, a sequel, will get more people to buy Mario Party. Just easy sales. And I think that's like part of the confidence for a strong hardware forecast, right? Getting the Mario games out there. So new Mario Party, I think it will drop in late September. That I believe is roughly like N-Cube either drop games in June or September / or early October. And I'm pretty sure, I feel like both of the last Mario Party games have dropped end of September, beginning of October. So I think that's just a good time for them from Nintendo's point of view. So that's when I'm fully expecting new Mario Party announced in June, drops then as well. Talking about big games though, Metroid Prime 4 is obviously a game that we're all hyped about as Nintendo fans, but I don't think the mass market is, going to be that enthralled by Metroid. Hopefully they will be, but as far as Nintendo's concerned, given how Metroid usually sells, while it's going to be one of their holiday titles, I don't think it will be the big holiday title. What I think will be the big holiday title is a Donkey Kong game. There's been a lot of murmurings for the last few years about a new Donkey Kong game. And recently it was fully confirmed that Vicarious Visions was working on a Donkey Kong game before it got completely scrapped by Activision. And while I don't think a part of the rumor where they say Nintendo picked up Donkey Kong, the project from Vicarious Visions, started working on it themselves, I don't think that's true. But it does show that there is an appetite from Nintendo to actually get a new Donkey Kong game out there. And they've made their own in the past with Jungle Beat. So I think they will just do it themselves, especially with the theme park, the Donkey Kong Land theme park, coming out in 2025 in Orlando, I think it was. And it coming out at the end of this year in fall for Japan. And then Donkey Kong's presence in the Mario movie as well. Having a brand new Donkey Kong game to take full advantage of this seems like just a really smart idea. And fans clearly want a new Donkey Kong game, and we haven't heard peep from Nintendo EPD, the Tokyo one, in a long time. Since Mario Odyssey and technically, I guess, Bowser's Fury. But they also got Nintendo, and they got NST to work on that as well. So a Donkey Kong game by them, I think this is the year to have it, and that will be their big push, their big holiday title for the end of this year. So yeah, I would expect that. And if we're going to be talking about rumours, the last game that I think we'll definitely get this year is that F-Zero GX. Now I know that there's been debate over whether people, when they were talking about it coming out last year, mistaked F-Zero 99 for it. But I feel like that's not the case. Like, it's not impossible, but people were very confident about it being a GX remaster. And I think with Nintendo releasing more GameCube games, like what they did for Pikmin, Metroid Prime. I expect them to do with Metroid Prime 2 as well. And the appetite for a F-Zero game, like a proper one, not just F-Zero 99. I feel like F-Zero GX is going to happen. Whether it happens now or later or whatever, I think F-Zero GX will be remastered and brought to the Switch or Switch 2. And given just all the talk about it, I feel like it's going to happen this year. So this is the one I am most shaky about on my list, but I'm still a little bit confident. So beginning of September is where I think they'll drop F-Zero GX, before Mario Party but after Fire Emblem. And that will be, obviously, it's there for the fans. I don't think they expect it to sell massively well, but it's there, and it gives them a big game, a core game to put in that period of time. So those are the games that I think will definitely happen. I've got a couple more that I'm not convinced on. I don't really have much evidence for. It's just a vibe. And if we're talking about GameCube remasters, Luigi's Mansion, I only really feel this way because we got Pikmin 1+2 last year, right before Pikmin 4 came out, putting the entire Pikmin franchise on the Switch. And with Luigi's Mansion 2 coming out at the end of June, Luigi's Mansion 3 obviously is a Switch game, like putting Luigi's Mansion 1 on here as just like an eShop title. Maybe they'll release a physical bundle with Luigi's Mansion 2, like a special edition of Luigi's Mansion 2 that comes with a code for Luigi's Mansion 1, or something like that. Doing something like just to get Luigi's Mansion on here, this is the time for it. So I think that could happen, but my only evidence for that is really just because of what they did for Pikmin last year. And I don't think it would be particularly difficult to port over, even if it's just the GameCube one, although I would much prefer if they added the Guigi stuff and all that from the 3DS version of the game. So that's one. A Kirby spin-off for the eShop is another one. Obviously, we had a lot of Kirby games over the last few years, and I don't expect a new mainline Kirby game until the Switch 2. But the spin-offs are fairly frequent, I feel like, for Kirby. So something Kirby-related dropping this year at some point on the eShop, wherever they need to fill in a space. That could happen. Could happen in July, along with the Nintendo World Championships. Like, again, I have no evidence for that other than it just being a vibe. And then the last one is a Mario sports game. I know there were rumors again about Mario Baseball. Don't know if it's going to be Mario Baseball or Mario Sports Superstars sort of thing again. But the reason I feel like Mario Sports is a similar reason that Mario Party I'm pretty confident about. Nintendo wants big hitters. The Mario Party games sell a ton, even with other Mario Party games on the market, and I feel like the Mario Sports games do the same just by process of being Mario. So getting another Mario spin-off onto the Switch in this year, and the sports games they seem to be relatively easy for Nintendo to churn out, as much as we as fans dislike how the last few have been. Them having another Mario sports game enter production after Strikers Battle League ended, and a different one from tennis and golf because we already have them, that makes sense to me. The only thing with Mario Sports is I just don't exactly know where it would fit in this calendar. It feels like I've gotten something pretty decent for every month. Maybe November, but because I put Donkey Kong in October, but it could be a bit, and there's no Pokemon as well. But it could be a bit late, I guess. Who knows? But yeah, that's it. That's all I predict. That's all I'm thinking that we'll get for this year. And if you look at that, I mean, Donkey Kong, Fire Emblem, Metroid, that's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid final year for the Nintendo Switch. And I think we're going to see it all in June. So I guess we'll find out when June rolls around what I didn't predict right, what I did predict right, what games they might have announced that I didn't even think of them doing. Like, maybe they'll announce Astral Chain 2, who knows? But that's just my thoughts. So, and the takeaway here is that we still have a lot of love in the Nintendo Switch to go for this year. So look forward to it. And we'll come back to this. I look forward to seeing you all again in the second half of June or the end of this year or whenever you rewatch this to laugh at me for how wrong I was. Alright, laters.